Mike, if you will come up, please. Mike Branch with Geotab, guys.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Stuart, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here in Raleigh. It's my first time in Raleigh. It's a pleasure to be here with BlueArrow. What an amazing partner, great partner ecosystem, I think, that we've encouraged here at Geotab. I'm going to be talking today about AI and data and AI. And over the past few years, so we always hear this, right? AI is complex. It's difficult to understand. It's difficult to use. I'm going to flip that on its head a little bit and say AI isn't complex. AI is simple. Would anybody agree with me here? Okay, all right, we got one. And the reason I say that is there's been no time in history when AI has been easier to use than today. If we think about what ChatGPT did for the world of AI, of generative AI over the last couple of years, it's been astounding. But the power that you have in your pockets to ask any question and have an answer provided to you is absolutely incredible. So despite the many complexities that there are, and yes, there are complexities to getting AI ecosystems off the ground, I would say that AI has never been simpler to use than today. And there's been so much acceleration in the world of AI over the last couple of years. It's for somebody who's working in the industry, I've never in my entire life had so much innovation so quickly. And so what I thought I'd do is I'd share with you a little bit of that innovation from a few different perspectives, and then we'll get into the world of how that is impacting fleet as well. And so if you think about what's happened over the last year, you've got ChatGPT, which takes a lot of text, and it's generative AI, right? Generates new text. You've got the same thing happening with images. You've got the same thing happening with videos. We only need to look a couple of years ago, and so this was GPT-2. So this is a predecessor to what is now GPT-4 and GPT-01. And in 2019, if you ask this question, tell a funny story about a mischievous cat who causes trouble to his neighborhood, you get an answer like this. Debatable whether it's really funny. It doesn't really tell a story or anything. And if any of you have used ChatGPT, just raise your hands. I'm sure I'm going to see a whole lot. Who says use ChatGPT? Okay, I got about 50 to 60%. Now, if you ask that exact same question, you get this. And it's about 5 times as long as that. I have to truncate it, right? But it tells a beautiful story. And not only that, it puts a beautiful image of a mischievous cat there. I mean, it's incredible what it's done, and that's only within 5 years. So this is a step function, right? It's accelerating so quickly. If you look at something, even like as I'm looking at images, right? So when I was giving a presentation back in 2022, I was talking about electrical systems, right? Being able to predict when a vehicle is going to have electrical systems issue. I wanted to create an image for it that, and so I put this up there. And this was 2022, and you can see it kind of did something good. It's got a little lightning bolt here. The vehicle looks kind of broke down, and I thought, wow, that's not bad. So I asked the same question a week ago, and this is what I get. That is completely generated by AI. That truck doesn't exist anywhere, right? This 2 years, right? And we're seeing this, so that's text, we've got imagery. We're seeing the same thing happening with video too. So I was at a conference last week, and there's a great, in San Francisco, there's a really interesting company called Run My ML. If you haven't had a chance to see any of the work they've done, look at it. It's remarkable. And so what they've done here, this was back in 2023. They took a video of a few books, and they have this video-to-video translation. So they took the books and said, create a city-state out of that. And so it was able to make that translation. This was a year ago. It was pretty impressive. And then you fast forward another year, and you get, this is the prompt that was given. Older man playing piano, lit from the inside. This man does not exist. That piano does not exist. That touch on the keyboard, that did not exist. So it is absolutely incredible what is coming. And that was within a year from the last image, right? So we're seeing the pace accelerate so much. So if anybody thinks that it's an AI winter or AI is going away, Oh my gosh, no, it is accelerating faster than I've ever seen anything happen in my life from a technical perspective. And this picture here kind of sums it up for me. If you've ever been to a carnival, you remember those races, right, where you have a little sport gun and you sport it, and one horse comes out in the lead, the other horse, is able to overtake them. This is what's happening with AI and the companies out there. Of course, OpenAI splashed onto the scene, right? They had this amazing ChatGPT, it was incredible, and then all of a sudden, what was it? We got to do something. So they go on lunch bar. Bard didn't do so well. But then they launched Gemini. And Gemini, you can ask a question of your entire Google Doc ecosystem. So if you have a Google Workspace, I can go and I can ask any question I want, and it's like ChatGPT for your Google ecosystem. And then you've got companies like Anthropic, who are really good at having the AI that reasons exceptionally well. Then you've got Meta, who's got open source AI. And what that means is now you can use their model and you can improve upon it yourself. And then you've got GPT-4o, which came out this summer, and holy smokes, was that incredible. It's multimodal, which means now that there is emotion and there's the intonation of the voice. It's absolutely stunning. I'm going to play a video in a sec, but you haven't seen any of that. And then recently, you've had GPT-01, which actually thinks, right? It reasons things out a little bit more. So you take this horse race, and there's a leader at some point. Sometimes it's Microsoft, sometimes it's Google, sometimes it's Anthropic. And it's incredible what's happening at such a quick pace that I think we're at a time where we will be hitting a bit of an AI revolution, right? So right now, these stats are taken from a couple months ago. 83% of companies right now, AI is a top line item in their business plan. A couple of years ago, it was nowhere near this. 48% of businesses are using AI to make sense of their data. We talk about data. There's a lot of data. So you got 48% of companies using AI to make sense of this kind of data. We're seeing 13-fold projected growth rate of AI over the next 6 years. $196 billion is the global AI market now. And in the US alone, in 2026, that's going to be almost $300 billion. 97 million people employed in AI by 2025. That's only a few months away. So this acceleration has happened. You've seen what's happened from the video perspective, from text, from imagery. It is coming very, very fast. And I will say, the reason I put this picture up here is a picture for me that symbolizes the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution started in 1760 and went about maybe 1840. But there was nobody in 1762 who said, hey, you know what, I think we're at the start of this Industrial Revolution. I would wager that now we are at the start of an AI revolution. That's been 2 years really in the making. Yes, AI existed back in 1950, and that's when it was first coined. But to really have a revolution, you need a few things to happen. You need a breakthrough innovation. I wager that happened a couple of years ago with ChatGPT. You need mass adoption. Holy smokes, we have that. You need economic disruption, public awareness and debate. If there wasn't any debate around AI, you've been living under, God knows what, and this global impact, right? So you need these things to happen, to have a revolution happen, and I think we're just at the start of this AI revolution. So as much as we've seen things evolve so quickly in the last few years, we are only going to see more and more and more of this happen. Because, it's starting to make it real for people, right? It's democratized it. You can touch and feel AI. It's creating new experiences for each and every day, more now than ever before. For the first time in my life, I was in one of these guys, a Waymo, last week in San Francisco. How many people have been in a Waymo? A couple people. It's a cool experience, right? You get in that vehicle, first of all, you unlock with you hail it, you unlock it with your phone, get into the Waymo, and the first thing it says, this will feel like a futuristic experience. And it did. you're looking at, you can see what it's seeing around you. It's got the monitor there. You can see all the pedestrians, everything it's looking at. The wheel turning by itself. I came home and I shared with my kids and like, Dad, like what's going on? I was even trying to inspire. Don't you weren't. Well, yeah, it was. I showed them the video, and it's incredible. So it's bringing these new experiences to us. It's bringing us the future, right? It's also bringing us empowerment. I don't know if anybody's seen this. There's Hellman's has an example of this. There's a few other apps, but you take your cell phone out, you go into your fridge, and you don't know what to make because you've got barely anything in your fridge, and it'll tell you exactly what to make from the AI, right? And it helps again against food wastage and all this kind of thing. So it empowers you as a mom or dad. Don't know what to feed your kids, hop it in, and you get an idea. And not only is that good for the busy parents, but imagine being visually impaired, right? So it gives you a sense of empowerment. And finally, this imagination unleashed. It is absolutely mind-bending. If you listen to my presentation at Connect from this year, you'll know I tell my kids stories every night, and increasingly good fun stories that are doing generative AI, and they're getting used to it, and they love it, right? My 6-year-old, he loves basketball. He loves Minecraft. And he loves dinosaurs. So he wanted to create an imaginary world where there were dinosaurs, fire-breathing dinosaurs, made in this Minecraft world playing basketball against LeBron James. Okay. So now all of a sudden, things that used to, feel that it was difficult to get your thought process out, difficult to imagine, you can get that. You can create so much more. It's absolutely incredible. So it's bringing us these new experiences, making it more real, democratizing AI so that it becomes part of our lives. Why do we like AI so much? There's all these fancy things that AI can do, but at the end of the day, it's a convenience, saves you time, and it allows you to achieve better outcomes. And this was from a section that OpenAI did a little while ago when they released GPT-4o. And it was around carrying out a conversation with somebody. Carrying out a conversation with somebody who had no idea how to speak that other language. The host of the session, she speaks in Italian, and the other guy doesn't, and they're able to have a conversation very, very fluidly just by leveraging ChatGPT. So if you haven't tried that out, how many people tried GPT-4o, the translation feature? One of you. Try it out. It is absolutely incredible. You can have a conversation with somebody in real time, and the apps before, they did an okay job of this, but this carries it out in real time, and it adds humor to it, and there's intonation. It's phenomenal. So if you're traveling anywhere, I had a colleague of mine who traveled to Korea and Japan, knew nothing about the language, was able to have an effective business conversation just by leveraging ChatGPT 4o.
Submit a few requests for what they'd like us to try up here. So I will take a couple of prompts. Okay, Bob Gaster wants to know if GPT-4o is capable of real-time translation. Mark, you want to try this one?
Sure, yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
I speak Italian, so
Okay, cool.
English.
English, Italian. Sure, let's do it. Hey, ChatGPT, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. How about you? How's your day going?
I'm doing great. So I would like you to function as a translator. I have a friend here who only speaks Italian, and I only speak English. And every time you hear English, I want you to translate it to Italian. And if you hear Italian, I want you to translate it back to English. Is that good?
Perfetto.
Mark, io mi chiedo se le balene potessero parlare, cosa ci direbbero?
Mike, she wonders if whales could talk, what would they tell us?
They might ask, how do we solve the equation?
Potrebbero chiederci come risolviamo le equazioni lineari.
Sicuramente sì.
Certainly, yes.
Rich, looks like yours.
So some phenomenal stuff there, and that's all available right for you on your phones. And you see the intonation. That's the thing that gets me the most, right? It's not only the capability to translate, with the capability to add emotion to it. And you can ask it to have any kind of emotion that you really want. Of course, it doesn't always happen as easily as that, right? You want a convenience that saves you time. I want one McDonald's and I want to order vanilla ice cream. And I get 2 vanilla ice cream, 1 with bacon, right? And for those of you who don't know, McDonald's had to actually pull their AI a little while back because there were orders of people who were getting like ridiculous amounts of chicken McNuggets, and it didn't get things quite right. So we want it to be a convenience that saves us time, and we also want it to achieve better outcomes. Those are 2 very important things. And so we're trying to do the same thing as it relates to the world of the fleet. As we look at fleet operations, we want to bring you these conveniences that save you time, and also allow you to achieve better outcomes than in one. And so we talked a little bit about safety earlier on, as Stu was mentioning it, and there's a lot of talk about safety at this conference. I think the talk after this one is around safety. So safety is a big deal for us at Geotel. We've doubled down on that because we feel that it's so critically important. And the tricky thing with safety is that it's not always convenient or understand how do you. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is reduce collisions for our fleets, for our drivers, all linkable. And the traditional way to do this is you have a safety scorecard where you have 30% harsh braking, 40% hard acceleration, yada, yada. You don't really know if those are the weights that you should have or not. You have to sift through maybe a few different reports. So what we're trying to do, what we've done, and we launched it earlier this year, I spoke about at Connect, and launched a new AI-based safety model, right? So we've looked at what the true collisions are, and then the model looks at, well, I'm going to tell you your drivers that are at highest probability of a collision in the next 100,000 miles. The weights are gone. We've done all the work behind the scenes to be able to tell you who you need to focus on first and foremost. So in this example here, my vehicle's name is Roadrunner, but you'd have your whole fleet here, and it bubbles up to for you right at the top of the page. These are the 10 vehicles, the 10 drivers that you need to pay attention to right now because of looking at all the ABCs, the harsh braking, hard acceleration, but we embedded that into the model. So we think that it's a convenience that really does save you time. You pull up your Geotab platform and you see this right off the bat. And we believe it leads to better outcomes as well too. We've been spending a lot of time since we launched this at Connect over the last few months to understand the outcomes. How are customers using it? What is beneficial? What isn't beneficial? And one quote I like is from one of the fleets, "You found my knucklehead." It was able to pinpoint very clearly which driver was driving a little bit more aggressively than they should, higher risk of collision. We had another fleet that didn't really believe in the AI right off the bat and said, I'm going to give you 5 drivers. I want you, Geotab, to tell me how your AI does in finding those drivers that were in these collisions, because he knew that they were in collisions. So what we did, of course, it was able to identify the vehicles, but not only that, just prior, it identified them as being a very, very high risk for a collision in the next 100,000 miles. So we're seeing that the impact not only is it convenience that saves you time, but it will lead to better outcomes. And then looking a little bit more in detail at that, it's one thing to see these quotes from customers and to hear this anecdotal evidence, but we wanted to put some numbers to it as much as we can at this point. And again, this was just released earlier this year. So what we did in Q1 of this year is we looked at the probability of collision in the next 100,000 miles for a segment of customers. And we followed that same segment of customers over into Q2. And there were, of course, customers that did get into collision. And what we found was interesting. The top 10% highest risk, that were at highest risk for a collision in Q1, identified in Q1, they were 106% more likely to get into a collision in Q2. So what this tells me is there's predictive value in this model. And we've just started here, right? We've only included right now the ABCs, the acceleration, braking, hardcore, and telematics. We've now added health context. Again, to try and make it simpler for you, to make it more convenient. Because there's so much more than just harsh braking, hard acceleration that comes to play. It's where were you driving? Were you driving in a congested city? Were you driving in a rainstorm? what was your speed versus everybody else that was on the road, a lot more comes to play. And so our theory is that if we're able to understand road risk, we can fuse that into our safety model. So we've just launched a new road risk capability. So we look at road risk across the entire scope of where our geotab vehicles travel, the United States, Canada, everywhere else in the world, Europe. And we've come up with a really interesting road risk model. I'm going to share some of what that looks like for you. So being in Raleigh, what if I just share an example of Raleigh? So Raleigh versus Atlanta, this is road risk, looking at collision. So what you're seeing here in the blue is weekday travel. Solid blue is Atlanta, dotted blue is Raleigh. Weekend travel is a solid red Atlanta, and dotted red is Raleigh. No surprise, Atlanta is a larger city, so it has a higher predicted risk. The increased risk weekday versus weekend, again, not too much of a surprise there. But it was interesting to see that in Atlanta, there was a higher risk on the weekend evenings versus the weekday evenings, right? And so this is one simple example of two different cities, but imagine having all of that automatically embedded into your safety model. So you don't have to figure out what road risk looks like. We've done all that work for you. Another example, speeding is always a great risk indicator, right? What we have here along the bottom is a congestion index. So the more congested the traffic is, it'll be further on the left. The less congested, when you get to 1, you're going out of the speed limit, okay? And so there's a higher risk for collision when you're stuck in congestion, and it's slightly elevated when you come out of congestion. Speed is always not a great indicator of risk, which is why we don't see it as a huge factor when we're looking at our probability of collision. Also, the variety of vehicles on the road make a huge difference. On the left-hand side here, you see less variety, so cars on the road, maybe not as many trucks, but when you start having motorcycles and trucks and cars and all different classes of vehicles, your risk increases significantly as well. And again, these things may not be too surprising, but to be able to take all of this context and put it into the safety model so it's available for you conveniently, that's an innovation. Again, the impact of weather events. So this was on the George Washington Bridge coming into and out of New York to New Jersey in blue and to New York in red. And you see a little bit of a spike there. Well, what was that? Well, there was a huge snowstorm then. So what that tells me is that our probability of risk and collision correlates really well with those weather events. And so the nice thing now is that you've got all of this road risk put into your safety models. And it's such an important risk factor, right? What we see is that there's a 22% increased likelihood of collision when you spend more time in congestion. And we also see a 30% increased likelihood of collision whenever you drive through intersections that are more closely spaced. So when they're about a mile in between. This is a proxy for cities and city driving this kind. But again, innovation here, it's not surprising that these things are important factors when tracking risk. But having all of that compiled for you, presented, is a convenience that saves you time, because guess what? To do all of that work, to figure all of that stuff out, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of AI that needs to come to play, and what we try to do is present it to you in a very, very convenient way. The second thing I want to talk about is a lot of our work in generative AI and how that's impacted. So we had a theory, and we released GeoTab ACE earlier this year in May. We started with a small cohort of customers, about 100 customers, and then we elevated to or about 300 customers right now, but we've been progressively improving the model. The goal here for you is to use this like ChatGPT for your fleet, right? So you ask a different question about your fleet, and it goes and it retrieves all that data and gives you the answer. And our hypothesis was, well, let's reduce time to insight. Instead of sifting through all of these different reports, let's give you a tool where you can ask that question and get the answer that you want in a very timely fashion, right? And so that's what we did with ACE. And we believe it leads to better outcomes. There's difficulties because there's hallucinations still, but we've been improving the model. Every week that goes by, I see that model getting better and better and better, and we're seeing better responses from customers as well. So we see things like, good work, little robot, this worked perfectly, this helps. So there's a lot of really great feedback that we're getting. There's also struggles and challenges too. But what I've been seeing is the accuracy getting better and better and better over time, and it will continue to get better. Remember the talk that we had at the beginning of this session was how AI is continuously improving and getting better, and it's not just these little minute step functions that's accelerating. We're going to see the same thing with ACE, and we're already starting to see that. So a couple of different examples of things that things do, right? You can go in there, you can ask it something like, what are the top 10 vehicles that consume most fuel in the last month in gallons, include the make and model. So there it goes, it gives you that answer usually in a few seconds. It usually takes between 20 to 30 seconds to get an answer. If you were using it a few months ago, it might have taken up to a minute, maybe a bit longer. We've tried to reduce that time frame quite a bit. Over the last month on weekdays, show me the day on average that, the average time spent at the Geotab HQ. So if you're looking at return to work policies and how often your folks are coming back, so I had to understand that Geotab HQ was a zone, and that it gave me those time, that information I was interested in. Again, my vehicle's name is Roadrunner. So how often did Roadrunner visit Geotab HQ in June? I came, 2 or 3 times a week, so that makes about sense. But again, I had to understand that Roadrunner was a vehicle here and pull that off. For how long each time, so you can continue the conversation. So it gave me every single start and end date of every single time that I did come to the office. Do any of my vehicles in my fleet have battery problems? So it understood that, hey, I got to look for something related to predictive maintenance. I have to look for that electrical systems rating. Turns out that there was a 2023 Porsche Cayenne that had an electrical systems issue. For those of you looking at fleet, you can keep these questions very structured, or you can go a little bit bigger, right? How are EVs in my fleet being used? That's a very broad question. So it has to reason with that and figure out, well, what does it mean? So let's assume here I might want to understand, the battery utilization in each of my vehicles, right? What's the average of the battery utilization between charges? So it gives me a nice picture here. I can follow up and ask, if I'm operating an EV fleet, maybe I have problems with the battery charge being low in the morning. Which vehicles is that happening on? So which EVs usually start their day with a low charge? It assumed low charge was anything below 30%, and then it lists it. And you can reframe the question, you can ask it different things. But these are the kinds of things. So it's quite broad. It started very narrow in scope, but now it's very, very, very broad in scope and understands a lot more context. And so I thought I'd give you guys an idea of this. What are the kinds of questions that customers are asking, right? So they're very interested in fleet utilization. Safety is a big area, not as much around maintenance, but this is from the last few months of conversations that people are having with ACE. But I thought, why should I tell you what people are asking of ACE? Why not let AI tell you what people are asking of ACE? So what I did is, and this is really interesting, and Geotab people know this already, but how many people have used NotebookLM before? It's mind-blowing. So I took a listing of all the questions, 1,000 questions that were asked in Geotab ACE. I pointed it to what ACE is, just a website. I pointed it to our responsible AI paper. So 3 documents is what I pointed it to. There's no coding required at all. I just literally pointed it to the website that uploaded a document and asked it to distill that information for me in the form of a podcast. It took about 3 to 5 minutes. And here's what we get, if the audio works. Hello, audio.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Get ready to dive into something we might not expect. We're talking about the hidden wolf, the secrets, really. Very inside your fleet gate.
Yeah, it's funny. Most people don't think of their vehicles as sources of information, but it can maybe what you can learn just from a little thing like where a truck is, how much gas is used, really valuable stuff.
Yeah, it's like a gold mine, right? So we're cracking open this data vault today, and we're looking at some real user questions that are given to an AI. This AI works with Geotab, which is a fleet management platform, and it basically sifts through mountains of telematics data. You've heard telematics. But just in case, think of it like the black box you see in airplanes, but for your trucks, recording every move.
Exactly, it's recording everything. Location, speed, even if the driver slammed on the brake. far right in.
And you wouldn't believe some of the questions people are asking this AI assistant, right? I mean, you got the basics, like where is my vehicle? It goes way beyond it. And you've got questions like, which of my vehicles are currently on the street outside Germany? So you can really see how fleet managers are using this data to keep track of a global operation. Pretty cool.
It really is. It's like having, eyes every year. And it's not just about location. We also have a lot of questions about efficiency. For example, someone asked, what would my average fuel consumption this month? Simple question, right? But that data can tell you so much.
Well, I called it. You see which vehicles are costing you the most. This is obviously important for your running a business. And speaking of costs, we also saw some questions about safety, like which vehicle had the riskiest operation last week? Now, how does the AI even know that? Is it watching dash cam footage or something?
Not quite. It's all in the data. So things like how often a vehicle speeds or brakes hard, even how sharply it takes corners, AI crunches all that data and it can actually predict, maybe predict the wrong words, but you can at least get a sense of which vehicles or maybe more importantly, which drivers might be, let's say, more likely to end up in a situation.
So instead of reacting after an accident, you can actually try to prevent it in the first place. How about foul?
It is. And you see that same kind of thinking, that forward thinking in the questions about maintenance. We've got people asking, do any of my vehicles have problems I should be aware of?
And we're not just talking about like a check engine light. This is about finding those hidden issues before they turn into major problems.
Right. For example, we had someone ask, which vehicles had an EV battery below 20% at least once this week? They're not just checking the battery level, they're looking for patterns, really trying to maximize the life of those expensive batteries.
It's amazing. It's like we're uncovering a secret language hidden in this data. I mean, who knew you could ask, let alone answer so many questions about your fleet just by looking at numbers?
And we're